So, welcome back to another Half and Half Scarf football podcast with me, Nick, and my mate Dom. And today marks a very different excursion for the podcast in the fact that it's not just Nick and Dom today. We actually have our first ever guest as we enter episode 18, and we've got a guest on who is the very epitome of someone adopting, embracing, and loving a random football club, that football club being Middlesbrough. And what I would say to you, listening or watching, is whilst it might sound like we're going to just talk about Middlesbrough for the next 50 minutes, it's really about the fan experience of how you do indeed adopt, embrace, and fall in love with a random football club. And we'll find out how and we'll find out who when we introduce our guests. So, the first thing I want to talk about is introducing my co-host as ever, and my co-host being Dom, my mate. And Dom's got a fantastic shirt on, and I've got my Boro shirt on, and we can see our guest there. Slightly spoilt the reveal of that if you watch it on YouTube, but we'll come to that in a second. YUSUF is our guest. We'll talk about that in a sec, but we always talk about the shirts first. Dom, that's a Hummel classic from about 1819. Why have you chosen that one?
It's the first shirt back when Hummel came back on board in 2018. It's like a play on the classic 86 shirt when Boro were reborn. It's quite simple, quite nice. Two-tone stripes, classic 80s. I like it.
I like it.
Yeah.
Crisp. Well, I am wearing my shirt from last night, and we're recording this on a Saturday morning early after Middlesbrough's fantastic game and fantastic victory over Ipswich in the Championship. So I'm still wearing the shirt I had on last night before it goes in the wash, because that's in honour of an absolutely tremendous game of football, a tremendous win in a game that had everything from comic own goals to penalty saves to just superb atmosphere, etc. So, but without further ado, that's for the people on YouTube. I'd like to introduce you to our guest. Now, our guest is known to many at Boro games, home and away. He's known to many fans in many stadiums because he always takes a seat at the front of the away end, and he's often leading the chants at away games at the request of the Boro Travelling Army. He's so famous, he goes like Madonna and Adele by just one name. So without further ado, welcome YUSUF.
Hi guys, how's it going? Thanks for inviting me.
No, absolute pleasure.
We're so pleased to have you on the show. It's a joy for us, and yeah, thanks for coming on, mate. We really appreciate it. We're really looking forward to this one, asking you some questions and finding out some more about you, because we think your experience and your fan experience is unique. And just as you were saying off air, your dedication. You were up at the Boro last night, and you're now back in London this morning. You didn't get back in till 6, and as we're recording this podcast on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, you're up and about and ready to talk to us, which is admirable, mate. It really is.
Appreciate that.
It is absolutely admirable. So let's get into it, shall we? You do live and work in London. You've got no previous connection to the Northeast, and yet you adopted and certainly embraced and have fallen in love over the last 20 plus years with Middlesbrough Football Club. I've got to say, what the hell? How on earth did that happen? What was the catalyst for it being Boro and only Boro in your formative years as a potential football fan? Just talk us through what the hell occurred to get you from being a London born and bred kind of guy to a Northeast kind of super fan, really.
Yeah, I get asked that quite a lot. Obviously, when I go to games, people hear the accent, and the first question they often ask is why Boro if you're from down south. So you're not the first person to ask me, and you certainly won't be the last. So yeah, I mean, long story short, my first football memory was Euro '96. I was only young at the time, and obviously being from sort of London, I lived in Wembley at the time, and England matches were all at Wembley. So my first football memory was actually England against Scotland at Euro '96.
Oh wow!
First time that I saw football, and obviously seeing, I wasn't at the game, but like just everywhere around the estate and everywhere around the Wembley area, there was lots of people handing out memorabilia for the game. They were giving out England hats, Scotland scarves, all these different bits and pieces for everyone around the sort of area. And that got me hooked to watch the match on TV. Saw Gazza's unbelievable, goal, and obviously England having a brilliant win. And that was like my first sort of football memory. Watched the rest of the sort of tournament, and that was the first time that I kind of got introduced to football, and I thought, wow. So obviously, there was no sort of local club to where I live, being at Wembley kind of thing. There's a few London clubs, but you've got obviously Arsenal and stuff, which is, you know, not very close to where I live, and Chelsea, which is West London, and a few other sort of clubs. Everyone else sort of supported like Man United. But for me, it just didn't make sense, you know, being in London and supporting Man United. So literally, I saw match of the day, first game of the season, the highlights of the following season, which is 96-97. And literally, the first game of the season was Middlesbrough 3, Liverpool 3.
Yeah.
Ravanelli got a hat trick. And I just fell in love. I just saw Ravanelli with his T-shirt over his head. And just seeing like Middlesbrough, I'm just thinking Middlesbrough, like it's Middlesbrough kind of thing. And that, you know, got me into sort of Middlesbrough. Saw the, you know, the rest of the season. We got to Wembley, obviously where I live, a couple of times. So that kind of, it was just like it was meant to be. Do you get what I mean? We got relegated that season. For me, relegation didn't mean anything. But yeah, absolutely loved it.
Can I ask you, did you even know where Middlesbrough was when you saw the Ravanelli highlights? And by the way, that game lives long in the memory, 3-3 to be first on Match of the Day. We were never first on Match of the Day, so it was probably a stroke of luck that we were. Did you even know where Middlesbrough was at the time?
Didn't have a clue. Honestly, I was only young at the time. So for me, I just think everywhere's in London kind of thing.
Yeah.
So for me, it didn't make sense. I just thought, you know, Middlesbrough is just Middlesbrough. So yeah, but yeah, obviously as I got older, I kind of understood it's as far as away from London as you could possibly have picked. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. I suspect as well, YUSUF, that first season, you were also lucky in that we actually had a good season and got to Wembley twice. So I bet that really cemented your love of the team as well, actually, them coming down to London and being in 2 finals. I bet you kind of, as a kid, thinking, wow, I've picked a really amazing team here. Not as a glory support, but just, wow, this team's amazing. They've got amazing players and they're getting to finals. So when you're young and you're impressionable, I bet that really cemented your love for the club as well, I imagine, at that age as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, you're only young at the time, so you don't really think about it. But obviously, as you get older, you kind of like reflect, and like for sure, it just meant it just felt like it was sort of meant to be. And I know we got relegated that season, but for me, that didn't mean anything. I had no idea what relegation meant. Obviously, I saw Janino on the pitch crying and all of that. It didn't mean anything. Even when the following season we were playing in, you know, Division 1, it was called at the time, which is Championship. It didn't mean anything. And then, of course, we went to another final, 98. So it was like at Wembley. So it was like meant to be.
Yeah, yeah. So how long have you actually been a match-going fan then? When did you start making that decision, saying, right, I can actually start going to the games now? And with you being in London, how did you make that work in terms of family, work? You know, we've been in the Championship, but most of the time you've probably been a match-going fan. That's a grueling season, 46 games. And did it start slowly? Did you just go to the home games? Were you more focused on the away games local to where you were? How did you approach it, and how did it evolve?
Yeah, it was the latter. Literally being in London, it was just the London games. So it started off, you know, just going to the London games. So my first first ever football game was Tottenham away. It was about 2004, 2003, 2004, something like that.
Yeah.
It was 0-0. It was like a midweek fixture. But for me, it wasn't even about the scoreline. It was about hearing the Teesside accent for the first time, hearing the baritones in person. Normally you hear it on the TV and the background, and it's not the same. But actually being in a stadium, hearing that, it was, absolutely fantastic. And it just started off being London games. And as the years have gone on, it was sort of, you know, London, it just sort of got a little bit further and further. And obviously financially it meant that, you know, I couldn't be able to go to sort of as many games as I'd have liked, but you try to go as many games. And then people are often surprised when I tell them, but, you know, the Riverside was often one of the last sort of stadiums that I've kind of went to because of distance. It was my first time actually at the Riverside. It was only about 8 years ago. It was, I think it was 2017 when we played Manchester City in the FA Cup quarterfinal. It was the year that we were in the Premier League.
Well, yeah.
Yaya Toure got a couple of goals, and that was my first time at the Riverside. I was actually in the West Stand, which is behind the dugout, and I couldn't stop looking at the South Stand from my seat. So I was behind Pep Guardiola in the dugout in the West Stand. For those of you that know the Riverside Stadium, and to my right it was like South Stand, which is the noisy stand, and I just couldn't stop looking at that stand. And I just said, you know what, the next time I'm there, I'm going to be in the South Stand, in amongst it. And basically was. So the following game I went to was Southampton at home, which is the final home game of that Premier League season. We're booing Brad Guzan, saying, off, 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 when he conceded a penalty. It was one of them seasons. But yeah, it was. That's basically the sort of story. And like he's, to answer your question about, the how I do it with family and commitment, and I'm quite fortunate, in fact, that I'm not kind of married yet, or haven't got any kids.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that's quite fortunate right now. I'm not naive. I know eventually I probably will get a family. I'll probably have kids. So whilst I can go, I'm gonna make the most of it.
Yeah,
but I'm fully aware that when I do have kids and stuff, it will be a different story.
Yeah, but added to that, what was it inside you that felt, I've got to get to every home game? Because that's a real effort on your part from where you're from. What was the passion inside you that was like, no, I'm gonna go to every home game. I'm going to the away games as well. Was there something where you just, a decision where you went, right, I'm going to every game? Was there something that just clicked where you were like, no, I'm going to every one. I'm in it fully and immersed. Was it a change from just the odd game or the odd home game to just, where did it evolve to every game? Because
hang on, Dom, it can't have been having Brad Guzan in goal, can it? That can't have been the catalyst for it, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's something that a few people have asked, and I've reflected on it. Obviously, the first time I was asked, I never really thought about it, but the more that I've kind of thought about it, it's like, obviously, when I was younger, I wasn't able to go to the Riverside, and I wasn't able to go to the UEFA Cup final, or the Carling Cup final in 2004 when we won it, or the UEFA Cup run. So I guess because I missed all of them incredible moments, beating Man United at home 4-1, beating Chelsea at home 3-0, all them like big moments, we had a fantastic record against the big boys. I guess it's that thing of, because I missed all of that, it was almost like,
I don't want to do another one, so I'm just going to immerse myself in it as much as I can for as long as I can. Yeah,
and that's exactly it, Dom. Yeah. That is literally it, and
I get it.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it makes it a lot easier to miss games for sure, especially the night games. It's easier to just stay at home and watch it, and with the travelling involved and all of that. But it makes it all worthwhile when you have moments like yesterday.
Do you know what? You just said the word. How many times do we say it, Nick? Football is about moments, and you said it as well. That's what you get when you go to the game. It's about those moments that make it magic.
That Saul Brin penalty save will stay long in the memory, won't it? I mean, A, it was a soft penalty. B, it was well struck, but a bit of a good height, but a hell of a save and a game-changing turn around the game. And you remember that moment, but it wouldn't be the same watching it on Sky, would it? So let me pick up on something, Yusuf, that you mentioned there about getting the games. You and I have spoken at a few, a few away games, and I know that you use public transport to get to and from games. Now, first of all, hats off using the public transport system in the UK. It's absolutely shocking. But the Riverside, on a midweek game, I spoke to you after the Stoke game. We played Stoke a couple of weeks ago on a Tuesday night. I live in York, it's an hour away, and sometimes you think to yourself, Christ, I've drive for an hour to watch Boro versus Stoke on a Tuesday night. Don't get me wrong, I'll always be there. But you're thinking, right, I've got to get from, Streatham or Brixton or whatever it is in London. I've got to get up to the Riverside on a Tuesday night. More importantly, I've got to get back from work for work. What's it like? What's your game day experience? Talk us through a Saturday. What happens on a Saturday game, a 3:00 game, and just talk us through briefly, how do you manage a midweek game using public transport? Because that must be a hell of a challenge.
Yeah, so Saturday's pretty straightforward. So obviously haven't got work that day, so you kind of wake up, do what you got to do. Wake up, have your shower, brush your teeth, have your breakfast, get dressed, all of that. Go to the train station, straightforward. I try to get to this train station. I always try to book my trains well in advance of kickoff. I don't like to book it because, like you said, it's quite unreliable transport. So I normally book it about 9 o'clock-ish in the morning. So it aims to get at the Middlesbrough train station about 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I know I've got a little bit of a window. I have to be incredibly unlucky where there's delays of like up to 2 hours, which, it's happened before, obviously, but you've got to be like really, really unlucky. But if there's a delays, which is likely, 20-minute delay here and there, half an hour, 45 minutes, I'll still be there well in advance of kickoff. So I try to book my train tickets, well in advance of the game. So try to get into the
Is it just one change as well? Change at York and straight through to Middlesbrough then, so it's not too difficult on the train, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, I've got a couple of stuff. I can change at York and change for the Transpennine that goes to Middlesbrough, or change at Darlington and change for a Northern train.
Yeah.
Or I could change at Eaglescliff if I've taken a Grand Central train from London to Eaglescliff and then Eaglescliff Northern to Boro. So I've got a few different options really. So yeah, it's just one kind of change. So that's quite, sort of straightforward. And yeah, just go to Middlesbrough train station and it's a short walk to the ground. And that's quite straightforward for a Saturday.
Midweek, not so much, because the train service to the Riverside, because I live in York, it's less than an hour on the train, and quite often I think, I wouldn't mind getting the train to a night game, and get a couple of beers and whatever, but the train service is terrible. How do you manage night games like Stoke and like Ipswich at home last night? What's the plan for that? Because that sounds like it's a bit of a nightmare to organise.
Yeah, so obviously we've had, I think, 3 league night games with West Brom and Stoke. Sorry, West Brom, Stoke, and last night Ipswich. So West Brom and Ipswich were fine because that's Friday night. Saturday I've got no work, so for me it was pretty straightforward. Friday, have a half day at work, leave a bit early, go to the train station, book the train. West Brom was a bit of a issue because obviously I went to Darlington, and then from Darlington to Middlesbrough there was no trains at all. So I was going to book a taxi, but fortunately there was a mate of mine, I say a mate of mine, a fellow Boro fan who I sort of speak to, and he was in the same predicament, and he was like, okay, I'll just get my wife to drive us to the stadium. So we left the station. We waited about 10 minutes. The wife drove from her house to the station, and they kind of drove us to the ground. So that was quite good. And sort of last night was all right in the fact that just took a train, changed the trains, worked okay, and then coming back. Because there's no trains after sort of, I think the last train back to London's about 6:30, 7:30 maybe, and obviously the game hasn't even kicked off, so that's obviously a no. So I have to find an alternative mode of transport. So I found a coach that takes me back to London Victoria. So for the Friday night games, that was no problem. The coach, 12:45 from Borough town, that took me back to London Victoria for about 5:45, and then from Victoria I took a bus back home, and I get home about last night I got home about 6, but I think against West Brom I got home about 6:30. Ipswich and West Brom, those I got home about 6:15, 6:30. West Brom was slightly more tricky in the fact that, not West Brom, Stoke, I'm getting muddled up with the games. Stoke was a bit more tricky because that was a Tuesday night game, so I've got to work the Wednesday morning. So obviously the 2 Friday night games, I can have a couple of hours sleep on the coach, come back home, have a couple of hours kip. So just before I came on the podcast, I'm a bit croaky on my voice, I had a couple of hours kip. Woke up, got my alarm, sort of 8:45, got straight onto this podcast. And then for the Stoke game, which is a Tuesday night, got on the coach, got back home about 6:15, lie down on my bed for about 20 minutes, have a little snuggle on my sort of quilt, and then just quickly get in the shower, brush my teeth, have my breakfast, go straight to work.
That 15 minutes is dangerous, though, isn't it? Because if you roll over, you like the alarm will go off. It's lunchtime or whatever. What struck me is, who knew there was a coach from Middlesbrough to London at midnight on a midweek game? But if there wasn't, you couldn't go, could you? Simple as that, So they're obviously putting that on as a YUSUF special, as I would call it. So long may that continue. But that's a hats off, as a fan. And I'm going to ask you about that in terms of being a fan. You're not a supporter, you're a fan, and fan is short for fanatic, aren't you? The fanaticism. Does it ever feel like, or not? Is it always like I'm buzzing? I don't care about the logistics. I'm really looking forward to it. Do you ever get like, oh, I can't be bothered?
You know what I've always said? The result is, don't get me wrong, the result will be, wins are brilliant, but the result for me is the last, in terms of the most important things, I rank that at the bottom, the result. There's way more important stuff, the people that you meet, the atmosphere, the day out, all of that for me is the social side of things. That is way more important. Don't get me wrong, the result, it's great when you win. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to lose. But out of when you rank the most important things for a game, I'd put the result at the bottom. I've never sort of thought, you know what, I can't do this anymore.
Well, if you were results orientated, you wouldn't have chosen the Boro in the first place, would you? To be fair, so if that was your and you just switched to City from United to City to Liverpool over the years, so the result is really important to football fans. But as you say, the match day experience, and we'll talk about that later about being embraced by fans, and you mentioned there a friend that then you qualified it well, actually just a fellow Boro fan, but you do create friendships with people, and you do have that kind of aura about you where people want to engage you. Particularly away games, you're always there early, you're at the front, and lots of people come and talk to you, don't they, and that kind of thing. So I guess that's all part of the experience, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, before sort of getting well known, people will still sort of talk to me. So it's not a case of people just talking to me because I'm a bit of a familiar face or whatnot. People have always the person next to me will always say, "Oh, what's your thoughts on the game?" And it's just a Borough thing where it makes you just um, just so welcoming and so friendly and so chatty. So I think it sums up Middlesbrough as a town. The people are just fantastic. Honestly, I couldn't speak highly of them.
Okay, Dom.
I think as well, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of where you rank the result. Because I think from your perspective, Yusuf, as well, traveling the way you do and the commitment you make and the hours you put in for a single game, if you were governed by the result, you just wouldn't do it. I mean, me and Nick always say about away games, you don't go to an away game on the expectation that you're going to win. You go because you enjoy the day, because quite often you might not win, or it might be a really poor game. So you have to get all the other things out of the game, out of the day, to make it enjoyable. So I think that's how you have to. Your mentality is spot on there. That's how I always treat it. Like you said, the holy grail is you go to a game, it's fantastic, you get the win. Like last night, live long in the memory. But if it's a dull game and you lose, it's all the things you've done that day that have made the day enjoyable, that get you out of bed for the next one. That's I think that's what all match going fans always do. Because if you were all about the result, you just wouldn't turn up, would you? Because it's everything you get out of it, being at the match, being with your mates. I mean, me and Nick met at the game, so you meet a lot of people, you get strong bonds and good friendships from football, and I think that's what's really important. And
I wouldn't hold that against the game that you and I met there, though, Dom. To be fair, that's not the game's fault. What I would say as well about that is when you listen to things like phone-ins on TalkSport, some of the morons who ring there, particularly the top six big sort of club fans, it's all about the result for them, and they'll lose their shit if they lose 1-0 at home to a rival. And you think to yourself, they're going to find an early grave for the way they support football. Yeah, I'm probably at the edge of being a bit of a loon when it comes to my energies for the game, but I really want us to win. But actually, if last night Ipswich had got a late equaliser, I'd have been gutted, but I'd have looked at it and thought, I've been involved in a cracking game of football. Thank God they didn't get a late equaliser, because it makes it even more sweet when you win 2-1. But like you say, it's the experience of the whole thing, isn't it? And if you're doing it for the results, you're supporting the wrong club anyway. And anyone listening to this who support a club that's not your Liverpool or your Man City, why are you following a team just based on results? Because you're always going to be disappointed, aren't you? That's the end game of that, really, I suspect.
Yeah, it is. And interest, just an aside, Yusuf, you must have to take a lot of time off work. So either you're very lucky and you have an extreme amount of holidays from your employer, or do you work shifts to work around that? Because over a season, how many, in terms of midweek games and midweek away games, do you end up taking quite a lot of time off to fit around the football? Does it impact you taking time off elsewhere? Because that's a big commitment for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, work's quite lucky in the sense that it's quite flexible, so I'm able to make up, my sort of missing hours and kind of work around the schedule. So there's a lot of sort of sacrificing. It's very, very tiring. You'd never guess if you see me bouncing about in the stadium, but
yeah,
I am absolutely exhausted during the week because it's the sacrifices that you've got to do. It's the way for it to pay for my train tickets, my match tickets, and all of that. But when it's an addiction, you've got no choice because you've still got rent to pay, bills to pay, and all of that, and you've got food and all of that you've got to sort of think about. For me, it's I've got I've not said it to many people, but I've got 3 different jobs, so you've got to kind of fit things here, there, and everywhere kind of thing. I've got today I'm off, but then I'm working tomorrow, so get a little bit of money kind of there, and you kind of just have to make these sort of sacrifices in order to go to the games. It's not easy, but it's what you've got to do, to be fair. And to answer your question, work is quite flexible in that sense. My main job, so I'm able to work around it, to be fair.
Dom, you got a question about away fixtures and stuff, particularly the challenges.
So I'm interested in what's the most challenging away fixture for you to get to in terms of transport wise, and which ones always present the biggest challenge for you? So at the start of the season, when you're looking, you think, I've got that one again. Is there some that always present a tricky match day in terms of getting there and getting back, and that you don't look forward to in terms of the transport, not the actual game?
Yeah. You know what? It's going to sound ridiculous, but actually, the Riverside, the home games, is the most because of the distance of how far it is, and I'd say that, and because I obviously do that travel regularly. They've got rail replacement work sometimes, so there might not be any trains between York and Doncaster, so they've got to divert around, and it takes the journey a bit longer. So the next home game against Wrexham, I have to go to Leeds, and then from Leeds, I've got to take a coach from Leeds to Boro. So there's all these little things. So I'd say, I know that probably wasn't the answer that you were expecting.
No, actually, it's an honest one. It makes sense. Actually, I think that is your toughest fixture, and it's 23 games a year, so it's
plus the cup game. So it is.
You can tell from your energy, though, you don't regret the decision at all, do you? So I mean, it would be very easy to go, you know what, QPR's a bit closer, or Millwall, or even the likes of Watford or whatever. But I mean, hats off. I know I'm going to talk about fans at other clubs as well. I know a couple of fans who do a lot like you do, challenging journeys. But once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, isn't it? Really. But what I would say, I've got a question for you. You stand at the front, okay, and you are kind of asked quite often by the Boro way, and YUSUF gives a song, and you embrace that fully, and that's a hell of a responsibility getting the away end going, but you do it brilliantly, right? But I've also seen you take some stick from some knuckle draggers in some stadiums, the types I mean. And so how do you, because you seem to let that wash off you, it just brushes off your shoulders, and it can get a little bit tasty with some of them goading you. If you were a different kind of character, how do you react to that kind of, YUSUF, what's the score, is okay, but it gets a bit worse than that sometimes at some grounds, How do you just react to the notoriety of being YUSUF, leading the away end, singing occasionally at away games, that puts you in the crosshairs of the home fans who, let's face it, some of them are a bit tasty, aren't they? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, football's about banter, and I think the majority of opposition fans will give a bit of banter, give and take. If and they're super kind and stuff. When you speak to them like after the game and stuff, obviously in the ground, there might be a few V signs and wanker signs and all of that, but generally it's not sort of too bad. You get the occasional idiot that might step over the line and whatnot. But the Borough fans always have my back, So there was one away ground last season. I won't name them, but they were sort of singing that I was like Harvey Price. So they're singing Harvey Price and stuff, and Harvey give us a song, or Harvey's give us a wave, sorry. And the Boro fans responded, Yusuf, give us a song, Yusuf. So the Boro fans always have my back, always, which is obviously fantastic. And I'm grateful for the love and support that I get from them. And opposition fans, I get a lot of opposition fans messaging me on social media and stuff. And honestly, I've got mates from Norwich fans, West Brom fans, Hull fans, Portsmouth fans, like even Leeds fans, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I saw you at the game," and we have a nice little bit of crack, a nice little bit of banter and stuff. But for me, I just take it as banter, and yeah, you might have the odd idiot here or there, that might go over the line, but you just have to respond with a smile. And I think the majority of the opposition fans kind of respect it, and you just kind of just reply with a smile and return it with a bit of love, and that's how I take it.
Excellent. Dom, just a quickie, because we're conscious of time. If you go to the bit about other people in the football community on the second page, I wouldn't mind finding out a bit more about that. So I'm just conscious we don't want to go over stuff we've covered already with use of sort of really fantastic comprehensive answers. We've got for those who don't know, we've done some prep for this, which is unusual because Dom and I don't usually prep. We've done some prep, so I just want to make sure we get through some of the things that we thought we'd ask. So kind of the second one down on page 2, Dom, I think it's quite interesting to find out if there's anybody else like him.
Well, yeah, if you met any similar fans that are as as unusual fans in terms of they support a club that's not where they live. So on your travels, have you met any like you who are as may live in London or somewhere else? You go, oh yeah, I travel 3-4 hours to go and see my club who are X in there, and are they as dedicated as you? Have you met someone like that, Yusuf, on your travels?
You meet a few, but often they might have family from the area and stuff, and they've got a connection to the club and whatnot. In fact, yesterday I met a Boro fan that came from Hong Kong. He actually came to the game last year. I don't know if either of you remember seeing a couple of Hong Kong supporters, but he came to the game yesterday, and he actually flew into Heathrow 6 a.m. yesterday morning, and then came to the game, direct to the game. So obviously that's absolutely unbelievable. And he kind of started supporting the club, I think, from like the Juninho era. So that got him to kind of into football. So yeah, it's you meet a couple, and it's interesting when you speak to fans from Boro fans, also opposition fans, when they give you these kind of stories. So yeah, I'd say that gentleman that I met yesterday was had a bit of trouble.
He's coming for 2 weeks, isn't he? He's taking in the Wrexham game next week. I think he's going to Sheffield Wednesday. I know a couple of guys. There's a guy called Killian O'Grady who's a Norwich fan who I was lucky enough to do a podcast with before Boro played at Norwich early in the season. He's a Canaries fan. He's based in Dublin, so he must have some air miles. He's also does his podcast I mentioned, but I think his connection with Norwich is purely he liked the yellow shirts when he started getting into football. I think it was as random as that. And he flies every home game and away game from Dublin on Ryanair. I mean, God forbid he's doing Ryanair journeys 46 times a year. He must be a saint. But I also know an English guy, a guy called Russ Dobberson, who used to live he still lives in the northeast, but he had a season ticket for Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga randomly, and he used to go for like 90% of the home games from the northeast, fly over. Don't know if he still does that anymore. I haven't seen him for a little while. But it just shows that football can stir your soul and your passions, can't it? And once you're hooked, aren't you? And you've got to be careful what you wish for if you're a football fan in terms of choosing. It's not about glory, it's about passion. And you've mentioned there about the Boro fans taking it to heart. You like the northeast community, you like the people and the culture of the northeast. So you've chosen well. But I bet sometimes you just wish I'd chosen well more locally, but that's just a separate issue. Some people do it, but you're a very rare breed. Killian's a rare breed, and Russ is a rare breed. And the guy from Hong Kong, it's his annual visit, but it's not 23 games at the Riverside. It's not 46 games away from home, is it really? But there you go. Dom, have you got any more to it?
I was just going to say, what do you feel is the best thing for you, Yusuf, about being adopted as a Boro fan and embraced by the fans? Is there something you value? I get I'm gonna try and answer this myself, but then I'll get you to answer. But just from our brief conversation today, I would suspect that for you, it's about the whole experience of engaging with the fans and just enjoying the occasion, no matter what that is, each time it happens, because it's a hell of a commitment every game for you. So I suspect it's I get the impression for you it's all about the feeling of the game, reacting with the fans, talking with the fans. Is that and them embracing you and loving you just for what you've become for them? Would I be right in that, or is it other things that you value and cherish about your love of being a Boro fan?
Yeah, you got that spot on. To be fair, Dom, it's all for me. It's all about the people and the community. Middlesbrough is more than just a football club. It's a community, and the people make Middlesbrough. And obviously, it's a hard, it's a working class town. It's hard working. It's proper. The way I describe it is sort of proper people. Obviously, living in London, I don't want to criticize, my home city too much, but it's so busy. You go on public transport, people don't talk to each other. They're, on their phones. Everyone's just rushing here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
But you go to Boro, and honestly, it's like going to a different world because the people actually communicate with each other. For one, everyone smiles. There's a real warmth and friendliness, and people are very, straight with you as well. They're very like, what you see is what you get. In London, people might kind of like the different sort of classes. You got the middle class and the working class and all of that, and a few of the middle class might look down on the working class or whatever. But with Boro, the way that it is, it's like everyone is just real, and if they've got something to say, they'll just say it. Even like to me, they're very kind of honest. If they see something that perhaps they don't agree with, whatever reason or whatever, they might have a word with me, and they're very honest, and I appreciate the realness of the Boro fans and the Boro sort of community, and I think it just sums up the town really, honestly.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I would get that completely. It's just very real. I've always, from being there, we perhaps take it for granted a little bit, but it's nice when you hear it from other people say, because it's just, they'll tell you straight all the time, very honest, and love the football club. Yeah.
What I would say is that I do talk to people on the tube. It just freaks the shit out of them. It's great fun. When I come down to London, I'll say morning. It's like, my God, the frightened the living daylights out of them when you talk to Londoners on the tube. They wonder if you're some kind of serial killer. But I do that deliberately just because it's just good fun. But there you go. In terms of, I'm going to ask you a question about your experiences. Really, two things. One is, what do you reckon is the strangest experience you've had on your travels, and what has been an experience that was where you felt like, oh God, I might seriously misjudge this, whether you've been left somewhere with your transport's being cancelled in the middle of the night or whatever it might be. What's the strangest experience you've had, and also what's the most nerve-wracking, shall we say, over the years that you've been travelling?
So yeah, that's a good question. So strangest, I mean, yes, it's a difficult one. I guess going to the toilet and being asked for a photo is, up there with the strangest experience. And it's like, okay, hold on, mate.
Can you just wait? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me finish, and then outside we'll have a photo kind of thing. So probably something like that is quite is quite bizarre. And then I'm just trying to think of times I've been stuck. I mean, there was a game I think we played against Norwich in 2019. I think it was a home game. I think it was like a 5:30 kickoff on a Saturday, and I rushed back to I think to Darlington. I booked the taxi back to Darlington, and I missed the last train home, and I was absolutely gutted. So I remember at the time, I've deleted Twitter now, but at the time I had Twitter, and I just put a tweet out, just sort of saying how gutted I missed the last train, and like it just human, sort of at the taxi service, because I ended up waiting ages for my taxi, and I booked it well in advance and whatnot. And then a Boro fan just messaged me and said, "You know what? Just keep in mind for tonight, and then travel back tomorrow morning." But unfortunately, the following morning, Sunderland were playing at Wembley, because I think they were in League One at the time. They're playing I don't even know what the pizza trophy, or I don't know what it's called at the moment. It's a Papa John's trophy or whatever it's called.
One.
Yeah.
they keep changing it. So I think they were playing. So I was on a train full of Sunderland fans from Darlington, London. So I ended up standing for the whole journey. And fortunately, at the time, there wasn't many I mean, one Sunderland fan recognised me at Darlington train station, but there wasn't too many that kind of knew me. So I kind of just zip up my colours and just head down, headphones in, and just kind of ignore it, kind of thing. So I suppose that's also strange, as well as answers both questions as well. That one there.
Yeah, we went to the Rangers pre-season game. Boro took about 8,000 fans up to Ibrox, and the same day Sunderland were playing Hearts in a pre-season friendly in Edinburgh. So I don't know who organised that. And let's just say that the train back from Edinburgh Waverley to the northeast was tasty. It was pre-season, so it was a bit light-hearted, but there was a few knuckle draggers on both sides looking for a bit of trouble at the Waverley station. But I was on a carriage on the train with maybe a third Boro fans and two-thirds Sunderland fans. And we were just chatting and enjoying each other. Company, what's the season going to hold for you? They were obviously promoted and they were hoping to just stay up. And, we were saying, we hadn't signed that many players at the time. And, I'd take playoffs now and all that. Just football fans talking. I think that's the key, isn't it? If you're looking for trouble, you can find it. But if you want to avoid trouble, just talk to people and just have a football conversation. Because most people, genuinely, those who travel usually are pretty well switched on, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I speak to opposition fans all the time, and just have a bit of, a little bit of banter here and there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But most of it is just like you kind of, kind of speak to like when I'm looking forward to Sheffield Wednesday. There might not be very many Sheffield Wednesday fans at the ground because they're gonna not go to that game. But the games like that, I look forward to just having a chat with them, speaking to real fans, and then appreciating our football club in terms of what we've got and whatnot. Because no one likes to see a club being, owned, managed in that particular kind of way. I think Sheffield United fans, as much as they hate Sheffield Wednesday, they wouldn't really wish that on their kind of enemy kind of thing, because they're real fans at the end. Of course, they want Sheffield Wednesday to get relegated, but they want them to get relegated because the team's shit, not because the owner is a nightmare.
Yeah.
You'd never want another team to go out of business, would you? And from afar, you never want to see teams being mismanaged, because you can always put yourself, as a dedicated fan, you can empathise with their position, because you think, I'd never want that for my club. And we nearly had that in '86. And I remember, being that person as a 13-year-old kid, thinking my club's going to go out of existence here, and then they didn't. So it is still very visceral and in my head. And it's we've talked about it, football ownership. It's nice to see Sheffield Wednesday fans speaking with their feet, and football fans have tremendous power. So I'll be glad to see them boycott the game. So strangely, maybe it's the best way to see the game in midweek is to go to a pub with some Sheffield Wednesday fans and get in there and see it that way. That might be a good way to see the game. But
I'll be honest with you as well. We've sold out again, home and away. We're doing fantastic in terms of support, but we've sold out the top and the bottom tier. There'll probably be more Boro fans in the away end than there will be in the entire Hillsborough stadium if their boycott goes to plan. What I would say to any Boro fans, and we recorded this beforehand, but it's going to go out after, I would hope that you didn't buy a pie or a pint or anything in the stadium to give that Chancery clown any revenue whatsoever. Take things with you on that basis. I've got a question about that in terms of, obviously if a club goes out of existence, which God forbid it will, it leaves you with a choice of swapping clubs. Now, I don't even know how that works, right? But I've got a question about the Premier League particularly is becoming more and more expensive. It's pricing itself out of the market for regular fans and proper sort of working class fans to go. If you were suggesting to somebody who's a Premier League fan, who's not really a fan because they can't go to games, to look at an alternative and relocate their affections elsewhere, what would you say about picking a club? I'm asking the question with something in the back of your mind saying, I don't even know if that could work, but let's say you're a priced out of it Arsenal fan or a priced out of it Man City fan, or, well, you can always get a seat at the Etihad, can't you? But a priced out of it Liverpool fan. but you think, well, I want to watch football. We've talked about non-league, but what would you say to somebody to look to adopt a club? What would be important for them to look for if they were going to change allegiances and swap to something more accessible and more affordable?
I'm with you, to be fair, Nick, where you said that you can't really sort of change clubs or switch clubs because your club's your club at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I guess if you fell out of love of like the Premier League, VAR, the money side of things, the real football is the non-league, the lower leagues, and I suppose that's the only way that you can kind of see it being acceptable because it's not like you're going from a club, from the Premier League to a club maybe in the Championship or League One or League Two that you might face against them in the FA Cup or whatever. But if it's like a non-league 10th tier, 11th tier, like really like low, I suppose that's the only way that I could potentially see it, because that's real football. That's uh, the players, their wages is being paid for by the supporters. It's like they really rely on that. The wages is not huge. It's not like Premier League or Championship or even League One wages where it's probably a reasonable amount where you can kind of live off it. But when it's like the lower non-league level, it's can't really like live off that. To be fair.
It's hard to switch allegiance. Dom, you've got a dual allegiance for various reasons and all valid. You're Boro fan by birth and a long-standing Everton fan by geography, and you support both equally. And we've talked about if they played each other in the FA Cup, your allegiance would be red and white rather than blue and white, but your daughters would be blue and white, and we get that. Yeah. But switching allegiance, I think YUSUF hit a nail on the head there. We've done a non-league special, haven't we? And you've been to a couple of non-league games and said, this is if for whatever reason Everton didn't exist or you couldn't get to Boro or whatever, non-league's a good option, isn't it?
Oh, I got an non-league regularly, and we did a pod on it, and I covered a couple of games in the week. We covered the pod on it, but yeah, that's football at its purest. Non-league, that's going back to how football used to be, and like YUSUF said, you've got players that the supporters are the lifeblood of the clubs, as are the volunteers that help run it. And they rely on the fans to help pay the wages. You can mix with the players. It's good end-to-end football. They mix it up. It's all kinds of different styles. You're right on the touchline, feeling it, hearing it. You're involved in it. It's purely community-based, and there's no VAR. There's honest refereeing decisions. They'll get things wrong. It's just seeing football at its rawest, at its purest, and dedicated fans and dedicated people who love the community club. And yeah, I think to YUSUF's point, that's what you tend to find when fans fall out of love with their team. They abandon it and go to non-league because it's going to something completely different. And I think that's where I would go, definitely.
They would have fans like YUSUF, a Gateshead fan will go to Truro away, won't on a Tuesday night and thinking, Christ, how random is that? There's still, even at those levels of dedication and whatever.
There's still diehard fans, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time. I've got one final random question for you, YUSUF, okay? And it is random because you travel a lot and you've obviously got to eat. So I've got here, what is your usual match day pack up? Are you a homemade pack-up guy or a meal deal at the station kind of guy? And to prove it, what did you take to the game last night, the Ipswich game under lights? So what's your pack-up choice?
So, to be fair, I'm more of a like McDonald's kind of guy, like just quick fast food, just get on with it kind of thing. But I actually have I can't really eat before the game, so because I think I think I ate like a brunch before about one-ish.
Hang on. I'm going to stop you right there. You can tell you're from London. Brunch. You're from London, aren't you? So brunch.
Breakfast and lunch. It's too late for breakfast, but it's too early for lunch. Have you know?
I know what bloody brunch is, but I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you tell me you had hummus and avocado, then we're going to end the podcast right now, mate. So, okay. No. So you had a bit of a brunch. Go on, talk to me about your pack-ups then. Go on.
So yeah, I just had a bit of a brunch. So yesterday, what did I have? I think I had a simple chicken nuggets and potato waffles with a bit of barbecue sauce. I know it's very, very unhealthy. And then go to the game, and I didn't really eat at the game. And then I ate after the game. I had a McDonald's. I had just people cringe at my McDonald's order. I went for a fisher fillet. People don't like the fisher fillet at McDonald's.
Wow, so you're the person who buys it, Yusuf. That's
I
it.
think
They
I'm the
make it for
only person in
you.
the world. I think I'm the only person in the world. So yeah.
My son's girlfriend Ellie, and I'll give her a mention. She came to the game last night. She didn't come to many games, but we had a spare ticket last night, so she came, and she came up with my son Rob, and they stopped at McDonald's on the way up because they're finishing work and said it's just easy and whatever. And she had the fillet of fish as well, so there was 2 sold yesterday in the whole of the UK, and we know both. We know both of the people who bought
both
them.
of those people. Wow, who
It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah.
Wow. I think one of my final questions would be, it's might be a hard one for you to answer, I don't know. Have you found in the 8 years or so that you've been traveling up to the northeast, is it changed how you maybe feel where you want to settle? Have you ever considered thinking, I could move up here and base myself up here? Has it had that kind of effect on you, or is your love for the club kind of almost separate from your other everyday life in London?
You've been to Middlesbrough, right, Dom?
No, I know, but I mean, in terms of living in the northeast, is that something that's ever come up in your head, Yusuf? Have you thought I could do this? Have the people had that kind of an effect, or is it still very kind of separate? It's like you've still got your life in London, you prefer that, and it's the football's separate, or have you found it intertwining or developing to a way where you think, yeah, I could move up there or change my life? Do you get where I'm coming from on that? Is it ever entered your head at all?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Dom, that is a very good question, and it's something that I have sort of thought about. Because obviously, with the train fares and stuff, rather than the train fares, I could use that for renting a place in Boro. So it's basically the same. Probably be a lot cheaper to rent a place than the train.
Yeah.
Tickets, in fairness, because the train tickets are absolutely outrageous. So it's something that I have thought about. But then obviously, all my friends and family are in London, so it's moving away from that side of things. And like I said, it's I've got almost like 2 different lives. I've got my Middlesbrough life, where obviously it's Borough, and then I've got my work private life, where it's those 2 separate kind of things. And it's something that I have thought about. But then you're also sort of thinking about, if I obviously moved to Borough, and this is in no way criticizing the people in Borough, but obviously going to the games is lovely, and being recognised and stuff, but I don't know how I would feel if I'm sort of recognised every time I'm going to like Tesco every single day, going to a bite to eat, and people constantly, in London I can go to Tesco, no one has a clue who I am. It's lovely, it's beautiful. 6 days of the week, like, I can just get on my own business, because sometimes you just need a bit of peace and quiet, to be fair.
I'll be honest with you, match days once a week, and it's 46 games and 23 games at home, but there's a hell of a lot of other time to fill, isn't there? And I think it get quite tiring when you're walking down the food aisle at Tesco and someone starts singing YUSUF, give us a song, wouldn't it, really? So maybe that's probably the anonymity of London's probably the best thing for that. On that basis, great question, great answer. Yusuf, you have been our first guest. You have been a fantastic guest, very honest, very passionate. We're delighted to have you on, and I'm sure, Dom, you'd concur with that with me. Superb.
Absolutely. I've never met Yusuf until this podcast, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you a bit, mate. I'm up for the Wrexham game, so I might come and seek you out, mate, and shake your hand and give you a shout. But I'm hoping this is the start of being able to say hello now and again, and a friendship. So I really appreciate you coming on the pod. It's been brilliant talking to you, mate. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
And I would hope that fans who listen to this, obviously it's very Boro heavy, but it's not really about Boro. It's about the passion for a fan.
Passion of a fan. It's a unique fan experience. It could be any club, but it just happens to be Middlesbrough. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Yusuf, for that. Great to see you again, mate. I'll see you. I'm not actually. I can't go to Sheffield Wednesday because I'm working down in Newbury in Berkshire. You might say, well, get 3 buses and a train and a taxi. And, put yourself in my shoes. I can't get to Sheffield Wednesday because of work. But it's only the second game I'll miss of the season. And but I'll be at Wrexham, and I've got my tickets already for Leicester and Watford away. So I'll definitely see you at those. I'm just going to finish for the YouTube channel with regard to the sort of the outtake in terms of the slide deck. So that's been adopting, embracing and loving a random club. And as I say, it says on the screen, a very special guest and a first for the podcast, having that guest on. So again, thank you very much for that. On episode 19, which is the next one we're recording, Dom and I, with no guests, we're going to reminisce a bit about things you don't see at or around football anymore. It's a bit of nostalgia, a bit of fun, and a few memories and talking points that I think our audience will enjoy, and particularly audience of a certain age will go, oh yeah, whatever happened to that? So that's the next episode that you'll see on episode 19, and we're getting there towards sort of the 20 there by Dom, which I'm sure you'll feel is I can't believe it already, Dom. So
I can't believe it, mate. I honestly can't believe we're on episode 19. Yeah,
there
sponsored
you
by
go.
Bold. Yeah.
So the last thing to say is please don't forget to subscribe, like, share on all your favourite podcast platforms and YouTube, etc. This has been the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast with me, Nick, and Dom, and our very special guest, YUSUF. So famous he's only got one name. And well done, folks, for making that a very enjoyable, entertaining episode. See you all soon.
Cheers, mate. See you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks.